The average British family throws away £60 worth of food every single month. That is over £700 a year binned, scraped, and forgotten. Your nan would have wept. She fed a family of 6 on a fraction of what we spend today, and her kitchen produced almost zero waste. Not because she read a book about sustainability, because she could not afford to let a single crumb go to waste. Number 18 on this list turns something you chuck in the bin every Sunday into a meal that feeds 4. And number 7 is so clever that professional chefs are only now rediscovering it and charging £18 a plate for the privilege. These 25 tricks were not written down in fancy cookbooks. They were whispered over garden fences, scribbled in the margins of Women's Institute pamphlets, and passed from mother to daughter in kitchens where the cooker never went cold. Before we start, hit that subscribe button, because what you are about to learn could genuinely change how you look at your kitchen. Let us count down the 25 smartest zero-waste tricks your nan ever knew. Number 25. The bread heel pudding. Your nan never threw away bread. Ever. Not the crusts the children left, not the stale half a loaf from Tuesday, not the heels nobody wanted. She kept a bread bag hanging on the back of the pantry door, and every scrap went in. When the bag was full, she made bread and butter pudding. But the real trick was not the recipe. It was the system. She knew exactly how much stale bread she needed, roughly half a loaf's worth, and she timed her baking around it. Bread at 2p a loaf in 1954 was too expensive to waste. The crusts and heels that modern families toss without thinking were the foundation of puddings, stuffings, and breadcrumbs that stretched meals for the entire week. She would tear the stale bread into rough pieces, soak them in a mixture of eggs, milk, sugar, and a scraping of nutmeg, then bake until the top turned golden and the kitchen filled with the scent of something that felt like a treat. Children never knew they were eating leftovers. They thought it was a reward. That was the genius. Number 24. Stock from every bone. Nothing left your nan's kitchen until it had given everything it had. After the Sunday roast, the carcass went straight into the biggest pot on the stove. Chicken bones, lamb bones, beef bones, it did not matter. She would add an onion cut in half, a carrot past its best, a stick of celery going limp, and a bay leaf. Then she would cover the lot in cold water and let it simmer for hours, sometimes overnight on the lowest flame. That pot of golden stock became the base for Monday's soup, Tuesday's gravy, Wednesday's risotto, before anyone called it risotto. A chicken carcass that today gets scraped into the bin produced 2 liters of stock, with more flavor than anything you can buy in a carton at Tesco for £1.50. The Ministry of Food actively encouraged this during rationing, and your nan never stopped because she knew it made everything taste better. She would strain it through muslin, pour it into old jam jars, and keep it in the larder for the week. Some women froze stock in ice cube trays, so they always had flavor on hand. That single habit, saving every bone, was the foundation of the zero-waste kitchen. Number 23. Potato peel crisps. While you peel potatoes and scrape the skins into the compost, your nan was making snacks from them. She would wash the peelings, pat them dry with a tea towel, toss them in a little dripping or lard, spread them on a baking tray, and roast them until crisp and golden. A pinch of salt, and they were better than anything in a packet. Children would hover around the oven, waiting for them. The peels from 6 potatoes, enough for a family shepherd's pie, produced a bowl of crisps that kept everyone happy while tea was cooking. Potatoes cost roughly 3p a pound in the 1950s, and every part was used. The starchy water from boiling potatoes went into bread dough or was used to thicken gravy. The peelings became crisps or were added to compost for the garden. Nothing was wasted. Modern chefs now serve potato skin crisps in gastropubs for £5 a bowl and call it elevated cooking. Your nan called it Tuesday. Number 22nd. The Monday soup pot. Monday was soup day in most post-war kitchens, and the reason was simple. Sunday's leftovers needed using. Whatever remained from the roast, the vegetables, the gravy, the bits of meat clinging to the bone, all went into the pot. Your nan would dice the leftover carrots and parsnips, shred the last of the cabbage, add any gravy or meat juices left in the roasting tin, and top it up with that stock she had been simmering from the bones. The result was a thick, hearty soup that bore no resemblance to anything tinned. Every Monday soup was different, shaped by whatever Sunday had left behind. Some weeks it was thick with root vegetables and chunks of lamb. Other weeks it was thinner, stretched with barley or lentils from the store cupboard. A loaf of bread and a pot of Monday soup fed the family for 2 meals. The National Food Survey of 1955 showed families wasting less than 3% of purchased food. Compare that to the 20% we bin today. Monday soup was the reason. Number 21. Bacon fat in the dripping jar. Your nan fried bacon most mornings, and the fat left in the pan was liquid gold. She would tilt the pan and pour that rendered bacon fat into a ceramic jar kept beside the cooker. Over the week, the jar filled with layers of flavored fat, each one carrying the smoky, salty taste of breakfast. That fat went into everything. She fried eggs in it. She used it to start soups and stews. She spread it on toast when dripping ran low. A pound of back bacon cost about 2 shillings in 1956, and your nan made sure every penny of value was extracted from it. The fat was the bonus, the dividend on an already useful purchase. Modern nutritionists spent decades telling us to throw this away and use vegetable oil instead. Meanwhile, we now know those hydrogenated vegetable oils were far worse for us than the animal fats our grandmothers trusted. That bacon fat jar was not just thrifty. It was accidentally healthier than the alternative we replaced it with. Number 20. Stale cake into a trifle. When a Victoria sponge went dry, or the Madeira cake from the weekend hardened around the edges, your nan did not throw it away. She sliced it up, laid it in the bottom of her best glass bowl, soaked it in sherry or fruit juice, and built a trifle on top. Tinned fruit, jelly, custard, whipped cream. Each layer hiding the fact that the base was cake nobody wanted to eat on its own. A whole trifle, enough to serve 8, could be assembled from leftovers and a few pence worth of jelly and custard powder. Bird's custard at 9p a tin and a packet of Shiver's jelly at 6p transformed stale cake into the centerpiece of any gathering. Women's Institute meetings, birthday parties, Sunday tea. Nobody ever asked if the sponge was fresh. They were too busy arguing over who got the sherry-soaked corner piece with the most cream. Number 19. Vegetable water for gravy. When your nan boiled vegetables, she never let the cooking water go down the drain. She kept a jug beside the hob and poured every drop of cabbage water, carrot water, and potato water into it, all rich with vitamins and flavor that had leached out during boiling. That vegetable water became the base of her gravy. Mixed with meat drippings and a spoonful of flour, it created a sauce with depth and body that plain water could never match. The Ministry of Food actively promoted this during rationing, publishing pamphlets urging housewives to save vegetable water because it contained nutrients the family needed. Your nan kept doing it long after rationing ended, because the gravy simply tasted better. Modern stock cubes try to replicate the flavor that came naturally from a jug of vegetable water kept warm on the back of the stove. We pour it down the sink now and wonder why our gravy tastes thin. First pattern break. Here is where it gets properly clever. The leftover roast vegetables that most families scrape into the bin were the foundation of one of the best Monday teas your Nan ever made. She would chop Sunday's leftover roast potatoes, parsnips, carrots, and any remaining meat into rough chunks. Then she would fry the lot together in dripping until the edges turned crispy and golden, pressing it all down with a spatula to form a thick cake in the pan. A fried egg on top, and you had a meal that was arguably better than the original Sunday dinner. This was bubble and squeak taken further, extended, made into something that felt intentional rather than makeshift. The trick was the dripping. It bound everything together and gave the hash a crust that shattered when you broke through with a fork. In some households, the Monday hash was more eagerly awaited than the Sunday roast itself. Children would ask their mothers to save extra potatoes, specifically, so there would be enough for hash the next day. That is the mark of a zero-waste trick done right, when the leftovers become the highlight. Number 17. Cheese rinds in soup. Your Nan never threw away the rind from a block of cheddar. She would wrap it in grease-proof paper, keep it in the larder, and drop it into soup or stew while it simmered. The rind would slowly melt, releasing a rich, salty umami flavor into the broth. It thickened the liquid slightly and added a savory depth that made people ask what her secret ingredient was. Italian grandmothers did this with Parmesan rinds, and British Nans did it with cheddar, red Leicester, or whatever hard cheese was going. A block of cheddar cost about 1 shilling and 6 in the 1950s, and those rinds, the bits most people trim off and bin, represented a good 2 ounces of flavor. Stirred into leek and potato soup or a thick vegetable broth, the cheese rind disappeared entirely, leaving behind nothing but richness. Fish it out before serving if it has not melted, and nobody will ever know. Your Nan knew this. MasterChef contestants discovered it 60 years later. Number 16. Overripe banana bread. When bananas turned brown and spotty in the fruit bowl, your Nan did not throw them away. She mashed them into cake batter with flour, sugar, an egg, and a knob of butter, creating banana bread that was moister and sweeter than anything made with fresh fruit. The riper the banana, the better the bread. Those brown, soft bananas that modern families bin by the millions every week were the ideal ingredient. Bananas became widely available in Britain again after wartime shortages ended in the early 1950s. By the late 1950s, they were a common household purchase, and wasting them was unthinkable. Your Nan's banana bread would sit on the wire rack wrapped in a tea towel, staying moist for days. Sliced thick with a smear of butter for tea, it turned waste into something children begged for. The irony is thick. We now buy banana bread from coffee shops for £3.50 a slice, made from the same overripe fruit we throw away at home. When mashed potato was left over from tea, your Nan mixed it with tinned salmon or whatever flaked fish was to hand, shaped the mixture into patties, coated them in breadcrumbs made from stale bread, and fried them golden in dripping. Leftover mash turned into fish cakes that cost almost nothing, made entirely from leftovers, and tasted better than anything the fishmonger sold ready-made. A tin of pink salmon cost about 1 shilling in the 1950s, and mixed with leftover mash from a family of 5, it produced 8 generous fish cakes, enough for 2 meals. The breadcrumb coating, made from the stale bread she had been saving all week, crisped up beautifully in the pan. Your Nan served them with peas and a squeeze of vinegar. Children ate them without complaint because they tasted nothing like leftovers. They tasted like a proper tea. That seamless transformation of waste into something desirable was the hallmark of every good Nan's kitchen. Number 14. Fruit scraps into jam. When the garden produced more fruit than the family could eat, or when apples fell from the tree bruised and battered, your Nan made jam. She would cut away the bad bits, Chop the fruit and boil it with sugar and a squeeze of lemon until it's set. Apple peels and cores went into a muslin bag and were boiled alongside to extract pectin, the natural setting agent. Nothing wasted. A pound of sugar cost about 6 pence in the 1950s, and the fruit was free from the garden or allotment. One afternoon of jamming produced enough jars to last through winter, lined up on the pantry shelf like jewels. Strawberry, gooseberry, plum, and bramble from the hedgerows. The best nans made jam from whatever was abundant and cheap, trading jars with neighbors in an informal economy that kept everyone's shelves stocked. Those jars of homemade jam meant toast was never boring, trifle always had a base layer, and jam roly-poly could be made at a moment's notice. The entire operation ran on fruit that would otherwise rot on the ground. Number 13. Tea leaves used twice. This one seems almost unbelievable now, but your nan used tea leaves twice. The first pot was strong and dark, served with breakfast. The used leaves stayed in the pot, and a second brew was made mid-morning, weaker but still drinkable, stretched with a little extra hot water. Some nans went further. The spent tea leaves were dried and sprinkled on carpets before sweeping. The damp leaves trapped dust and freshened the house. Others dug them into the garden as compost. A quarter pound of loose tea cost about 2 shillings in the early 1950s, and a family of 4 could go through that in a week easily. Getting 2 brews from every measure of leaves was not meanness. It was sense. The weaker second pot was often what children drank, milky and sweet, while the adults got the strong first pour. Every scrap of value was extracted from those leaves before they touched the soil. Number 12. Meat dripping toast soldiers. The leftover dripping from the roasting tin, the brown jelly that settled beneath the white fat when it cooled, was the most flavorful part. Your nan knew this. She would scrape that savory jelly onto toast, spread it thin, and cut the slices into soldiers for the children. The jelly was concentrated meat essence, rich with the flavor of Sunday's roast. Spread on hot toast, it melted slightly and soaked into the bread. A pinch of salt and a crack of pepper was all it needed. This was a meal in itself for many families during the week. Bread at 2 pence a loaf, and dripping that cost nothing because it was a byproduct of the roast. The white fat on top went into the dripping jar for cooking. The brown jelly beneath went on toast. Nothing remained in that roasting tin but a faint sheen. Your nan would scrub it clean with salt and newspaper, another zero waste trick, before it went back in the cupboard ready for next Sunday. Number 11. Apple peel tea. When your nan peeled apples for a crumble or pie, those long, spiraling peels did not go in the bin. She dropped them into a small saucepan with water, a clove, and a stick of cinnamon if she had one, then simmered the lot for 15 minutes. The result was a fragrant, slightly sweet apple tea that warmed children on cold afternoons. Some nans added a spoonful of honey. Others let it cool and served it as a cordial. The pectin in the peels gave the drink a silky body, almost like a thin fruit syrup. This was a trick born of rationing, when every scrap of fruit was precious and throwing away the peel felt criminal. 6 apples worth of peels produced enough tea for the whole family. The same peels that modern kitchens compost without a thought were, in your nan's hands, a comforting drink that cost absolutely nothing. Number 10. Leftover rice pudding fried slices. When rice pudding was left over, and in most households it often was because nans made enormous batches, she would let it set cold in the dish until it was firm enough to slice. Then she cut thick wedges, dusted them in a little flour, and fried them in butter until golden and crispy on the outside, soft and creamy within. Served with a spoonful of jam, this was a tea-time treat that children adored. The leftover pudding that would otherwise sit forgotten in the larder until it went off became something new, something exciting. The contrast between the crispy fried exterior and the soft, sweet rice inside was genuinely delicious. A whole rice pudding cost maybe 6 pence to make in the 1950s. Getting two entirely different meals from it was the kind of everyday brilliance that defined your Nan's kitchen. She never called it upcycling. She called it common sense. Number 9. Stale bread into breadcrumbs. Third pattern break. This one underpinned almost everything else on this list. Your Nan kept a jar of dried breadcrumbs on the shelf at all times, and it was the most versatile ingredient in her kitchen. Stale bread was grated by hand on a box grater, spread on a baking tray, and dried in a low oven until crisp. Those breadcrumbs went into fish cakes, coated croquettes, topped gratins, bound meatloaf, stuffed chickens, and thickened sauces. They were the glue that held half her recipes together. A constant supply of breadcrumbs meant she never needed to buy them, and she never ran out. The jar was topped up weekly as bread went stale, creating a self-sustaining cycle of thrift. Modern families buy Paxo breadcrumbs for £1.20 per box, and they throw away enough stale bread each week to fill 3 boxes. Your Nan would have been horrified. That jar of breadcrumbs represented the entire philosophy of her kitchen. Nothing is waste until you decide it is. Number 8. Bacon rind flavoring. When your Nan trimmed the rind from bacon rashers before frying, those tough strips of skin did not go in the bin. She would drop them into whatever was simmering on the stove, a pot of beans, a pan of lentils, or a batch of pea soup. The rind would slowly render its fat and release a deep, smoky, salty flavor into the dish. After 20 minutes of simmering, she would fish the rinds out and discard them, leaving behind a broth that tasted like it had been made with a whole ham hock. This single trick could make the blandest pot of vegetables taste rich and meaty. Back bacon rinds from a week's worth of breakfasts, saved in a covered dish in the larder, gave your Nan a constant supply of free flavor. Professional kitchens use the same principle when they simmer Parma ham bones in minestrone. Your Nan did it with Wall's bacon rinds and never made a fuss about it. Number 7. Herb stems in bouquet garni. Your Nan did not throw away parsley stems, thyme stalks, or the tough outer leaves of leeks. She tied them together with a piece of string into a small bundle and dropped it into soups and stews while they cooked. This was a bouquet garni, a technique that sounds French and fancy, but was standard practice in any sensible British kitchen. The stems actually contain more concentrated flavor than the leaves, something food scientists have since confirmed. Your Nan knew this instinctively. She would fish the bundle out before serving, having extracted every drop of flavor from scraps that most modern cooks discard without thinking. A head of celery produced 3 meals' worth of bouquet garni from the tops and leaves alone. Leek tops, carrot fronds, the woody stems of rosemary to the bundle. All gave flavor. All cost nothing. Restaurants now charge for dishes elevated by the same herb stems your Nan used for free. Number 6. Leftover tea in cakes. Cold tea left in the pot went into fruit cakes and tea loaves. Your Nan would pour cold tea over dried fruit, sultanas, currants, and raisins, and leave them to soak overnight. The tea plumped the fruit beautifully, adding moisture and a subtle tannin depth to the cake. The next day, she mixed the soaked fruit with flour, sugar, an egg, and a spoonful of marmalade, poured it into a loaf tin and baked. The result was a dense, moist tea loaf that improved over days and sliced like a dream. No butter needed. The tea did the work. cold tea that would otherwise be poured down the sink became the secret ingredient in a cake that kept the family in packed lunch treats for a week. A standard fruit loaf cost about 2 shillings from the baker. Your nan made a better one from cold tea and a handful of dried fruit that cost pennies. Number 5. Chicken skin crackling. 4th pattern break. When your nan prepared a chicken for roasting, she sometimes removed excess skin from around the neck and cavity. Those scraps of raw skin went onto a separate baking tray, stretched flat, salted, and roasted at high heat until they crisped into golden crackling. Chicken skin crackling was served alongside the roast as a snack, or crumbled over soups and salads during the week. The rendered fat that pooled in the tray was poured into the dripping jar. Nothing was wasted. A whole chicken cost about 4 shillings in 1955, and every gram of value was extracted. The skin crackling was the bonus, the reward for thorough butchery. Children fought over the crispiest pieces. Modern food trends now celebrate chicken skin crackling as a delicacy. Japanese yakitori bars serve it for a premium. Your nan gave it away free because it was just what you did with the bits. Number 4. Pickle and chutney from gluts. When the garden or allotment produced more than the family could eat, your nan preserved the excess in vinegar. Runner beans, beetroot, onions, green tomatoes that would never ripen, windfall apples, marrow. All could be pickled or turned into chutney with vinegar, sugar, and spices. One afternoon of pickling could produce 20 jars that lasted through winter. Piccalilli, red cabbage, pickled onions, green tomato chutney. The pantry shelves glowed with jars of preserved vegetables that would accompany cold meats, cheese, and bread through the lean months. A bottle of malt vinegar cost a few pence. Sugar was cheap. The vegetables were free. Your nan's pickles meant nothing from the garden ever rotted. Everything had a destination. Even the marrow that grew to monstrous size when no one was looking became chutney that the neighbors begged for at harvest festival. Number 3. Fat skimmed from broth for cooking. When your nan made stock or simmered a stew, a layer of clear fat would rise to the surface as it cooled. She would skim it off carefully with a spoon, strain it through muslin, and add it to the dripping jar. This reclaimed fat was clean, flavorful, and perfect for frying. A pot of chicken stock alone could yield 2 tablespoons of pure chicken fat, known as schmaltz, rich enough to fry potatoes in or stir into gravy for extra body. Beef stock gave beef fat. Lamb stock gave lamb fat. Each one had its own character, its own use. Nothing floated to the top of that pot without being captured and put to work. The idea of skimming fat and pouring it down the drain would have struck your nan as genuine madness. That fat represented calories, flavor, and money. Extracting it from every pot was as natural as breathing. One roast chicken, properly managed, could produce stock, dripping, crackling, and enough leftover meat for 3 further meals. That is 5 meals from one bird. Your nan did this without thinking. We struggled to get 2. Number 2. Vegetable end soup. Your nan kept a container in the larder, and later in the freezer, for vegetable trimmings. The ends of onions, the tops of carrots, the tough outer stalks of celery, the stems of mushrooms, the wilting leaves of cabbage. Everything trimmed away during the week's cooking went into that container. When it was full, she tipped the lot into a pot with water and simmered it for an hour to make vegetable stock. Or she went further, adding lentils or barley and a handful of whatever was in the cupboard, turning those trimmings into a thick soup that tasted of everything good about the week's cooking concentrated into one bowl. This single habit meant that the peelings and trimmings from 5 days of cooking, scraps that modern households bin without thinking, became a meal in their own right. The flavor was remarkable because it drew from such variety. No two batches were the same. Each one was a record of what the family had eaten that week, transformed into something new. Number 1. The Everything Stew. At the top of this list sits the trick that defined the zero-waste kitchen more than any other. Your Nan's Everything Stew was not a recipe. It was a system. A heavy pot sat on the back of the stove or in a low oven, and throughout the week it received whatever needed using. Monday's leftover roast meat went in. Tuesday's aging carrots joined it. Wednesday's potato peelings, Thursday's last onion, Friday's bacon rinds. The stew was never finished. It was topped up, simmered, and served in cycles. Each day it changed, deepened, and improved. By the end of the week, the broth was so rich and concentrated that it tasted like something from a restaurant kitchen. The French call this pot au feu and guard the tradition fiercely. Your Nan called it the stew pot and thought nothing of it. The genius was in the layering. Each addition brought new flavor. The long, slow simmer melded everything together. Nothing was ever wasted because everything had a destination. That pot was a promise. No matter how bare the larder looked, no matter how tight the week had been, there was always something hot and nourishing ready to eat. The Everything Stew was not a meal. It was a philosophy. Feed the pot, and the pot feeds you. Whole generations of British families were raised on this principle, and we abandoned it the moment ready meals promised us we did not need it anymore. We were wrong. Try one of these this week. Save the bones from your next roast. Keep your vegetable trimmings. Fry your potato peelings. Start small. Then come back and tell me your Nan was not a genius. Share which trick you are going to try in the comments. I want to know how many of you still have a dripping jar. I want to hear from anyone whose Nan used tea leaves twice and thought nothing of it. Because these were not just kitchen habits. They were a way of life that we threw away and are only now realizing we need back. Your Nan knew. Now you know too.